Thanks for joining us. I'm Megan Roberts. CBC is projecting a minority government for the Liberals. Right now, Prime Minister Mark Carney is just 3 seats from a majority. CBC made the call the day after polls closed as a number of ridings were simply too close on election night. One of them is Nunavut, where NDP incumbent Lori Idlout edged out her Liberal challenger by less than 100 votes. The rest of the North stayed red. Brendan Hanley and Rebecca Alty handily won the Yukon and Northwest Territories. We will have full coverage of the territories and Nunavik, but first, let's take a look at the big picture. Leader Mark Carney celebrating last night's win. So far, the Liberals have been elected or are leading in 169 seats, just shy of that 172 needed to form a majority. Meanwhile, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh says he will be stepping down, with the NDP set to lose official party status and Singh himself losing his own seat to Liberal Wade Chang. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has also lost his longtime Ottawa riding to Liberal Bruce Vanjoy. Let's go to Nunavik now, a region with a new MP and a whole heap of problems on election day. Mandy Golmasti is Nunavik's MP. She took the region's riding with 40% of the vote. Speaking from central Quebec, Golmasti believes the riding's many different Indigenous communities helped secure her win. She says she will continue fighting for their representation in Ottawa.
It is a vast riding that represents so many different people. It's my honor to work in representing all of them. But for me, it is clear that, I've seen such a high level of engagement, especially within my nation. There was a lot of people who came out and voted, wanted to ensure they were represented.
Golmasti resigned as the Grand Chief of Quebec's Cree Nation government less than a month ago to run for the Liberals in this election. She'll take over from the Bloc Québécois' Sylvie Bérubé, who held the region's seat for 2 terms. Not everything went to plan in Nunavik on election day, though. Voters in several villages say they are furious after polling stations closed hours before they were supposed to. Some say they lost the right to vote and that Inuit are being left out once again. Samuel Watt has the story.
Elia Lauzon doesn't trust the government or the electoral system, but she still turned up yesterday in Pavernatuk to have her say.
But I do know it's the smallest right that I have offered to me and fought for me by other Indigenous activists over the course of decades.
Only to show up to see polling station staff closing up at 2:30 p.m, 7 hours before they were supposed to. CBC has heard from residents in 4 other villages who say polling stations closed early afternoon. Elections Canada says weather prevented access to some communities and they struggled to recruit local teams.
As Inuit, we've had this stereotype with non-Inuit people using us for show, but then when it's actually time for us to be involved, we're not involved.
Saluet's Mary Papigatuk says she's tired of government officials claiming they're engaging with Indigenous people. She also takes aim at the omission of locals employed at voting stations, plus the lack of voting and campaign information in Inuktitut. Mandy Golmasti, the region's new MP, says she received calls all day from Nunavik and she'll fight for all Indigenous people to be represented.
We can file a complaint, we can file a report, but even better, we can now make it a bill.
And equal treatment is something Kayla Miko wants to see after she watched a plane with polling station staff on board take off from Quaktuk without her vote.
We are Canadians just as people that live down south are Canadian.
Voter turnout in Indigenous communities has historically been an issue. In 2021, only 23% of registered electors in Quebec's Indigenous communities voted. Samuel Watt, CBC News, Iqaluit.
Nunavut was a nail-biter on election night, as we mentioned earlier. The NDP and Liberal candidates were neck and neck. And with the Liberals so close to a majority and the NDP taking such a fall federally, it was a riding to watch. Now, NDP incumbent Lori Idlout has taken the territory with just 77 votes. She spoke earlier with the CBC's Juanita Taylor.
It feels quite humbling to have had to wait this long for this result. So I think a huge part of the next few weeks will be to have some difficult discussions with my fellow caucus members. As we all know, our numbers have fallen quite a lot. So I'm thinking of all the friends that I've made in the 44th Parliament, and we'll definitely be having some difficult conversations in the next few weeks.
In the end, Idlout received 37.4% of Nunavut's vote. Liberal candidate Kilikvek Kabluna got 36.5%, and Conservative candidate James Ariak got 26.1%. Last night, TJ Deer visited all the candidates in Iqaluit as they anxiously waited for answers.
At the Nunatasuna Museum, supporters of NDP candidate Lori Idlout gathered in hopes of a re-election. Speaking with CBC News, Idlout discussed the needs of Nunavut to promote Arctic sovereignty.
They are facing issues right now. They want to help, but they don't have enough housing, or they have to go out of territory to get medical treatment or anything else. These issues are far too many. We need to tackle them first in order for Nunavut to start joining the Arctic sovereignty movement.
Over at the Aksarnit Hotel, Conservative candidate James T. Ariak held his own watch party. Ariak is looking for more support for the North from the new government.
They're going to have to prove that the North actually matters to them. I haven't seen them, they failed the North, and you can see that through the amount of taxation we've experienced, the unfair taxation with the middle class.
Ariak's team left the hotel around midnight, and Idlout's team left the museum an hour later. Liberal candidate Kilikvek Kabluna watched the results from her home in Iqaluit. She said she's excited that Mark Carney will be Prime Minister. Kabluna also talked about what she heard from her visits to some communities.
I heard quite often the concern for the high cost of living in Nunavut. I agree that it's important for Nunavut to be able to afford to live in Nunavut in a way that is comparable to anywhere else in Canada.
While Idlout is heading back to Ottawa, she'll do it with the NDP set to lose party status. The NDP finished the election with only 7 seats. TJ Deer, CBC News, Iqaluit.
The Northwest Territories will send the Liberals' Rebecca Alty to Ottawa. She took 53.8% of the vote. The CBC's Sydney Cohen has that part of the story.
The Northwest Territories has been a Liberal stronghold for a decade. Rebecca Alty now carries that legacy forward.
Together with the Liberal team that made government, I'll fight for more housing, infrastructure, and supports for the drug crisis across our communities.
MP-elect Alty is Yellowknife's mayor. She'll now step down to assume her seat in Ottawa. Alty attributed her federal win partly to her political experience and partly to Prime Minister Mark Carney.
There was a lot of support for his leadership taking us through these challenging times. So,
with more than half the votes in her favor as of this afternoon, Alty easily beat the Conservatives' Kimberly Fairman. Fairman came in second with about a third of the votes. Even after the Liberals were projected to form government last night, Fairman wanted to keep the fight going.
I will absolutely run again. I had such an amazing time getting out into the communities. I had very good conversations with all community members, and we had an amazing team that came together, and we were really focused on making sure that we heard a lot of voices up here, so I'm in it.
The NDP's Kelvin Kachulia came in third with about 12% of the votes as of today, and the Greens trailed with 1%. Earlier yesterday, Kachulia said that in the event of a loss, he'd consider running territorially.
Where I think, for the most part, people like me as an individual and a person, and I'm probably carrying more of the party than the party carrying me. So I'd say I would definitely consider MLA.
On the campaign trail, the Liberals vowed to bolster Arctic defense, improve the North's housing stock, and add 50 new Arctic Indigenous guardians to help protect the environment. Sydney Cohen, CBC News, Yellowknife.
Yukon voters have handed Liberal MP Brendan Hanley a second term. Hanley beat out 3 other candidates for the territory's lone federal seat. Jackie Hong reports.
Yukon voters have handed Liberal MP Brendan Hanley a second term. Hanley was first elected in 2021. He left his position as the territory's chief medical officer of health to run for office. Speaking to supporters in Whitehorse Monday night, Hanley promised to not let his re-election go to waste.
I can't wait to get back to Ottawa to meet my colleagues, old and new, and to work with the Mark Carney team. There's so much to do, and there's little time to waste. So thank you again, Yukoners, for giving me your support and your trust.
While final numbers were still trickling in last night, as of 11:30 p.m., Hanley had scored just more than half of the vote. Conservative candidate and runner-up Ryan Leaf, meanwhile, had just under 40%. Leaf had previously served as Yukon MP from 2011 to 2015. The riding has swung Liberal ever since, something Leaf had campaigned on changing.
It's it's always a bitter pill when you don't get the result you want, but at the end of the day, this is our democracy. Yukon got to choose tonight. They made their decision, and I respect that.
Hanley will serve as MP under a projected Liberal federal government, with Mark Carney as Prime Minister. 2 other parties ran candidates in the Yukon this election. The federal NDP's Catherine McCallum came in 3rd place, while the Green Party's Gabriel Dupont came in 4th. Jackie Hong, CBC News, Whitehorse.
While eligible voters were casting their ballots this election cycle, some grade 5 students at Nekashuk School in Iqaluit also got to cast a ballot. It was part of their unit on civics, where students learn about the election process. Monday was their chance to vote in a mock election. Bria Kilulak was one of the students who voted.
I've always really wanted to do it because I saw my parents doing it, and I really thought it looked fun.
Kathy Welsh is the teacher who ran the election. She says it's important to familiarize kids with the voting process.
It's really important that they learn that it's not scary or complicated, so that we will have lifelong voters and that they can learn that it's something that they have a say in what's going to happen.
Nekashuk School was one of 12 in Nunavut participating in the program. 2 schools in Nunavik also participated. Nekashuk School's students voted for NDP candidate Lori Idlout, who received 28 of the 48 student ballots.
The claims period for 2 classes in the First Nations Child and Family Services and Jordan's Principal Settlement is now open.
First Nations children who were removed from their homes on reserve between April 1st, 1991 and March 31st, 2022, and their caregiving parents and caregiving grandparents can now submit a claim for compensation.
There are free supports to help you fill out your form.
And mental health and wellness supports if you need them.
Learn more and submit your claim at fnchildclaims.ca.
I am a champ.
I am a champ. I am a champ. I am a champ.
I am a champ. A member of the Warham's Child Amputee Program, thanks to your donations.
Are you an aspiring songwriter? Do you want your song to be part of Nunavut's cultural heritage? Let's celebrate 10 years of Inuktitut songwriting with this year's themes, Piluk sa Tilunga and Inuit Sanasimayangit. For contest rules and more information about Kilo 2025, visit www.gov.nu.ca. The deadline for submissions is May 5, 2025.
Hi, can I take your order? Hello?
Oh, hey. Wait, what was the question?
Let me guess. One driving high combo, extra baked.
No. Could I get a burger with a side of fries?
Think you're a better driver when you're high? Think again. Smoking weed affects reaction time and concentration. A message from Mad Canada.
In Nunavut, a tuberculosis screening clinic is opening at the Arviat Hamlet office this week. The clinic will help the Department of Health identify TB cases in the community. Health officials want people between the ages of 13 and 40 to attend the clinic. An outbreak of the disease was declared in Arviat on February 11th. Since then, fewer than 5 people have been diagnosed with active TB and 12 have been diagnosed with latent TB. The screening clinic will continue until June. The NWT's Integrity Commissioner is recommending that the Legislative Assembly pay the legal fees of a former nurse who worked in Fort Resolution after an MLA spread unsubstantiated rumors about her in an effort to get her fired. Luke Carroll has more.
The NWT's Integrity Commissioner says MLA Richard Ajerikon breached his code of conduct, and that it would be both unfair and unjust for the Legislative Assembly to cover his legal fees, but not the legal fees of the victim of his actions. Jennifer Patterson worked as the nurse in charge in Fort Resolution from 2018 until 2022. In 2023, she filed a complaint about Ajerikon. This past fall, that complaint received a response. The Integrity Commissioner found Ajerikon had launched a campaign against Patterson and repeated unproven allegations about her. The Integrity Commissioner wrote that Ajerikon had undermined the integrity and credibility of the Assembly as a whole. In the report released yesterday, the NWT's Integrity Commissioner wrote that it is unusual for the complainants to have their legal costs reimbursed, but this situation meets the threshold. And he recommends the Legislative Assembly cover the $325 hourly rate that the Assembly pays for an MLA's legal counsel. MLAs will need to either accept or reject the recommendation within 15 days of sitting. Luke Carroll, CBC News, Yellowknife.
A parasite outbreak near Rennie Lake, Northwest Territories is raising concerns across the north. A Saskatchewan hunter found 16 caribou infected with a parasite called Soteria. The animals are believed to be from the Beverly herd, which migrates between Nunavut and the NWT. Earl Evans is a hunter and land user in Fort Smith, NWT. He says the parasites are spread by mosquitoes. He hasn't seen them himself, but has heard about them for years.
The people in Great Bear Lake up by Delaney are finding them too, and the people in Kavuktuk, the people in North Saskatchewan and Northwest Territories up towards the ice road. So it seems like it's right across all the caribou herds now.
A group of experts studying parasites at the University of Calgary has been monitoring the outbreak since 2023. They're working with the Kugluktuk Hunters and Trappers organization. They say warmer weather could be making things worse and leading to more mosquitoes.
One, if there's more mosquitoes and if mosquitoes are out for a longer period of time during the summer, there's more likelihood that caribou are going to get infected. The second thing is within the mosquito, the development of the worm depends on temperatures. So warmer temperatures means it will develop faster, which means that mosquito can infect the next caribou more rapidly.
Dr. Coots adds that the parasite might look alarming, but it doesn't harm people. They're now investigating the extent of the outbreak and its impact on caribou health. The National Day of Mourning was on Monday. It's meant to honor people who have been killed or injured at work. Labor leaders from across the north gathered in Iqaluit to pay tribute. The event happened at the Sarnit Hotel and was marked by the laying of flowers. A moment of silence followed to honor those who have died. 11 workers in the Northwest Territories and Nunavut died in 2024 because of workplace accidents. Their names were written in a book of mourning. The Northern Territories Federation of Labor organized the event.
This can happen in any workplace. This can happen to anybody. One worker death is too many.
Jason Rashawn, president of the Nunavut Employees Union, spoke at the event. He stressed the absolute necessity of workplace safety.
When you send a loved one off to work in the day and you hug them or kiss them goodbye, a child, a son, your partner, it's a fair expectation and a right that you get them home safely at the end of the day.
Rashawn encouraged Canadians to advocate for improved safety measures in their workplaces. Plans are underway to replace the George Black Ferry in Dawson City, Yukon. Mechanical issues in recent years have impacted the ferry's reliability. The Yukon government says there's some work to do before choosing a new vessel, and in Dawson City, reaction about a new ferry is mixed. Chris McIntyre has more.
The George Black Ferry has been crossing this river back and forth for the past 5 decades, but its age is showing, including mechanical issues and delays.
It's broke down a bunch of times last year and the year before, and it's put a lot of people who live on that side of the river out. So maybe it's a good thing to have.
Justin April is all for a new ferry. For years, people have floated the idea of a bridge, but West Dawson resident George McConkey says river travel is just fine.
I like the ferry. It dictates kind of the pace of the town. A lot of people talk about a bridge and this and that, but no, it just kind of forces you to slow down.
Some people want to know more about how much the replacement will cost. Jemmy Lawrence says he wonders if the money would be better spent on a more long-term solution.
It's kind of troubling to think about where they're getting all this money from to bring up this brand new ferry and to spend money on this brand new ferry. When they have something here that does work, doesn't need repairs all the time, but it does work. And they're spending all this money on bringing something new up instead of maybe a solution that could be for the future, like, say, building a bridge.
The former mayor, Bill Kendrick, says he likes the idea of a new ferry, but doesn't think a bridge is a bad investment either.
With our changing climate, a ferry becomes less and less reliable just by nature.
The new ferry is still years away. The government says it anticipates that it will have the ferry in the water by 2029. There is still no cost yet for the ferry. Chris McIntyre, CBC News, Dawson City.
Students in Tuktoyaktuk NWT returned to a newly renovated school today. They were on an extended spring break, so staff could move into the new space. It's part of an ongoing renovation project to improve the aging school. The CBC's Des Loreen takes us there.
But it's always good to have extra though. Yeah.
The new addition to Mangalaluk School is now open to students and the public. Students returned to classes today after an extended spring break. Staff are excited to invite the public to use the new gym for community events.
We've been waiting a long time for that, for the community to come and join assemblies and everything in the gym. Yep. My son's pretty excited to see his new class, and we don't have to put our jackets on to go to the gym. So yeah, it's all exciting.
The newly built kitchen, cultural room, and library are being used as temporary classrooms until the rest of the school is renovated. Those are scheduled to be done over the next year and a half.
I think everybody's excited. Like the high school, they're situated in the CTS building, so they have their own little hub. They're still part of our team, but they're quite content right now where they are until we have the school that's finished.
Community events like feasts or dances can now be held in the gym. Local organizations can contact the school for more information. Des Loreen, CBC News, Tuktoyaktuk.
Baubles, bangles, and beads. A Yukon nonprofit has scored a treasure trove of donated jewelry. Earlier this month, the Run for Mom organization asked Yukoners for their unwanted costume jewelry, and they got quite a haul, as you see there. Almost 40 kilograms of earrings, bracelets, rings, and necklaces. Each piece had to be sorted, cleaned, and mounted before it could be sold this week. All proceeds from those sales will go to Run for Mom. The nonprofit has been active for almost 3 decades. It's raised almost $1 million for mammography machines, a breast ultrasound machine, and other breast health initiatives. Its biggest fundraiser is the annual Mother's Day Fun Run. That is coming up on May 11th. The final results of the 26th annual Nunavut Quest are in. The dog sled race covers 500 kilometers from Pond Inlet to Igloolik. 8 mushers competed in the race and crossed the finish line last Wednesday. Janil Nunavut placed first with a time of 40 hours, 53 minutes, and 33 seconds. He will take home $20,000 in prize money. Second place went to Joshua Kilikti Ivalu, and third place went to Lee Anuara. Competitors took 8 days to complete the journey. The Kivaluk Snow Challenge has officially come to an end. The snowmobile race in Rankin Inlet, Nunavut draws competitors, families, and just enthusiastic fans all to the bay. The CBC's Noel Kaluchak was there too.
The community of Rankin Inlet was buzzing with excitement this past weekend as the Kivaluk Snow Challenge got underway. The annual snowmobile race is held on the bay and see racers reach up to 177 kilometers per hour on a rough and challenging 20-lap, 2.6-mile track. 45 racers took part in the race at the beginning of the race weekend, and 16 of those went to the finals. Shauna Diaz, the mother of 2 of the winners.
It was very hard and difficult to watch the boys race each other.
Albert Netzer is the father of 2 young men who took part in the races. The 3 made it to the finals together.
It was a lot of fun racing against my 2 boys. They have been practicing during their junior days and they keep getting better along with the other young racers. They are getting better and better.
Tristan Diaz took first place while his younger brother Tyrese Diaz took second place, not far behind.
That's a lot of work on a rough track. Sled's okay, I think it's working all right.
About 300 fans watched the races. It was also broadcast live on social media with Susan Misrala keeping the fans entertained with live update. Noah Kalujak, CBC News, Rankin Inlet.
And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/north. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts. Have a good night.
How can any of this be fair?
Now you might think, hey, we just need more doctors, but that's not really it.
A ration scheme here
shows you where it starts, where it ends.
Were you really willing to risk that job? Yes.
At Thunder Bay's favorite festival, Wake the Giant.
Ta-da! There it is.
Stream anytime. CBC News.
Sabrina Sohal. Your 6-month probation in serious crimes begins today.
Let's go, sister. Gloves and boots.
Don't discount her instincts. She'll follow them with or without you.
You lied to me. You played me like I was one of your marks.
I could be on the other side of the world right now.
You've gone soft. You need to be focused on the long game.
Who has more fun than us?
Everybody.
The only person you can count on is you, yourself, alone.